Parents promised me that they would help me with my baby so I could work when my husband fell sick. But when my golden child sister returned home after her divorce, they told me that my husband and son were not their family, not their responsibility, and now after 3 years of no contact, my parents want a chance to be grandparents, but I just laugh in their faces. 3 years ago, I cut my parents out of my life because it became very clear to me that to them nothing was more important than my sister. Not me, not my husband, and not even their grandson. For context, when I was in my second trimester, my husband was diagnosed with lupus. He had been experiencing symptoms for a really long time, almost a year, and after a lot of tests and visits to the hospital, this is what the doctors had to say, and it was a very difficult time for us because we were expecting a baby and his diagnosis was obviously not good news for us. At a time like that, of course, you expect your family to be there for you, and when I told my parents about it, they assured me that they would try their best to help me out with the pregnancy and the baby once I had given birth. Of course, my in-laws were also there for me, but it meant a lot to me that my parents had agreed to help as well because we didn't have a very good relationship before that. We had only started becoming closer after my sister moved away after her marriage 7 years ago. When my sister was around, my parents always prioritized her more because she was pretty much the golden child of the family, but after she moved away she got busy with her life there, so she didn't keep in touch with our parents. I thought that this was finally going to be an opportunity for me to bond with my parents, but I was wrong. They only wanted me as a placeholder for their favorite daughter. I figured that out pretty early because 2 months after my son was born, my sister returned home and said that she was getting a divorce from her husband because apparently he had been cheating on her, and my parents forgot about me and my family almost immediately. They started spending all their time with her. I was obviously not happy about it because they had promised me that they were going to help us out with the baby, because my husband and I were still trying to deal with his diagnosis, so we were busy with frequent visits to the doctors, and even when we were at home I couldn't count on my husband to be helpful all the time. Naturally, given his diagnosis, it would be inhuman to demand that he help out equally as well because most of the time he was quite fatigued. I didn't have any complaints with him. I was so upset with my parents, and at one point I even confronted them about their behavior. I brought up how they had promised me that they were going to help me out with the baby after my husband's diagnosis, but they started accusing me of being entitled even though they had made that promise themselves. I had confronted them over the phone after a particularly difficult day, and it turned into an argument, and a pretty bad one at that, because I had been feeling very upset and let down by them. I had even brought up how they had treated me in the past when I was a child. I pointed out how my sister had always been more important to them, and they started denying it even though it was pretty obvious to everyone else. At one point they got frustrated and they just told me that my sister was more important to them, especially if I'm going to be comparing her to my family, because apparently my husband and my son are my problems. Their exact words were that my husband and son were not their family, not their responsibility, but my sister was their family, so I couldn't be complaining about this. And that statement was so incredibly hurtful that I never spoke to them again. I immediately disconnected the phone call and blocked them, and even though it has been 3 years I still haven't been able to forget about it. Since then I haven't spoken to them, and that's how I intend on keeping it as well. Thankfully I did have my in-laws and they took care of us wonderfully. They knew that my husband was having a difficult time and had been having a difficult time even when I was pregnant, so they would drop in every other day to help us out with the baby and everything else. We managed to get by just fine without any help from my parents, but I was just disappointed that they didn't even consider my husband and son their family. The fact that they didn't even consider their grandchild as family, that's what actually hurt. Anyway, it has been 3 years. We have a full-time nurse now since we can afford it. My husband's web development business took off last year and I quit my job and joined him as well. Both of us are entrepreneurs. We run our business from home offices and it's a pretty convenient arrangement. Recently we also celebrated our son's 3rd birthday, and a couple of days after that my parents showed up with a bunch of gifts. I was quite surprised to see them here because 3 years had passed since our last interaction, and after that they had never bothered to reach out to me. And when they showed up they did not even address our last interaction. They pretended as if nothing had ever happened, and instead of apologizing they just started acting very casually, and told me that they had come by to meet their grandson because they would finally like a chance to be grandparents. Their behavior was so ridiculous. I just chuckled and shut the door without responding because there was no way that I was going to let them meet my son and give them a chance to be grandparents, especially not after what they had said the last time we had spoken. I still remember how they had said that my husband and son were not their family or responsibility, so now I wanted them to stick to it. They were obviously very upset about it and did not want to leave, so after I shut the door, they were pretty loud about the whole thing and were trying to get me to open the door again so we could just have a conversation and clear the air. But I wasn't interested in speaking to them at all, so I pretended that I couldn't hear them until they went away. My in-laws and husband could hear that entire interaction, but they did not say anything until I had cooled off a bit. About half an hour after my parents had left, They decided to speak to me and they told me that even if I did not want to give my parents a chance to meet my son now, they would advise me to speak to them at least once. My husband and his parents believe that rather than acting out of anger, I can think about things with a cool head and at least give him a chance to explain themselves, because even though it has been 3 years, they did show up. They believe that if I don't even give my parents a chance to clear the air with me, I might end up regretting it in the future. If I do speak to them, whether or not it works out, at least I'll have the satisfaction of knowing that I gave them a chance and they were the ones who screwed it up, but I did what I was supposed to do. They were not imposing their beliefs on me or anything. I know for a fact that they were just giving me advice that came from a place of concern for me, and I really appreciate that, but honestly I don't want to talk to my parents. I don't feel ready for that, and I really don't think that I need that kind of drama in my life right now, because my parents and I have always had a very hot and cold relationship, and after that last fight that we had, I had made up my mind that I was never going to speak to them unless they apologized to me sincerely, and that hasn't happened yet. They just showed up and they did not apologize for anything. Even if they do apologize, I'm going to take a long time to judge if they actually mean it or if it's just because they want to have a relationship with their grandchild. So it's not even like I'm going to forgive them immediately. I'm going to take my own sweet time, and I think that I've earned it. After all, they have never treated me well and my sister has always been their priority. But at the same time, I do feel like my husband and his parents have a point that I might end up regretting it in the future if I don't even give them a chance to explain themselves and make it right with me. So I'm kind of confused right now. Ida for not wanting to talk to my parents now after 3 years of no contact? Update 1. I thought about it. I went through all the comments and stuff as well, and thank you so much for that, by the way. But coming back to what I decided, I know that I'm not ready to talk to my parents yet. Emotionally, I'm still extremely hurt by their behavior, and I had decided that I was not going to speak to them unless they apologized, which has not happened yet. I still haven't received an apology from them, and until that happens, I'm not going to be talking to them. They had their chance to apologize that other day as well when they showed up, and they were trying to talk to me from outside the door after I shut them out, and they insisted that we could clear things out. But the one thing that they were supposed to say was that they were sorry. They didn't say that, so it's fine. I have spent the past 3 years without any contact with them, and I can spend the next 3 this way as well. I've spoken to my husband and his family about it as well, and let me just make it clear there was no bad blood between us in the first place. We are not fighting about this. They were only giving me advice because they were concerned about me. They know how upset I had been when my parents decided to reach out to me after we had that fight last time, so there's no argument. They are not forcing me, and there's absolutely no pressure on me. I just felt like I had to make that clear, judging by a few comments that people had made about my husband and his family. He and his parents are really nice people. They would never force me to do something that I'm not ready for right now just for the sake of family. And when I explained my side of things to them and told them that I was still not ready to talk to my parents yet, they were very understanding about it. They told me that even if I didn't feel ready at any point later on as well, they would not have a problem with it. They only wanted me to know that whatever I decided, they knew that it would be the best and they would respect that decision. It's been a couple of days since they visited, almost a week, and they haven't made any second attempt to contact me yet. I don't even know why they suddenly tried to reach out to me after 3 years, but anyway, I have a feeling that they might try again. If they don't, that's great. But if they do, I won't entertain them unless they apologize to me first. Update 2. Hi. So earlier this week, my sister got in touch with me. I hadn't blocked her, so she texted me on Instagram and told me that she really wanted to have lunch with me because she was in the vicinity. She and I don't really have any bad blood, to be honest. We have just never been very close. We had our differences as teenagers, but after that things have been calm. Initially I was a bit skeptical about having lunch with her, but her message sounded sincere, so I agreed. In the past 3 years, it's not like I've been completely no contact with her as well. We have had some interactions. We usually just wish each other on birthdays or on holidays, so it wasn't that awkward to see her, even though I knew that she was going to talk about our parents at some point. She made some small talk. She told me that her divorce had been finalized 2 years ago, and since then she's been staying here but hasn't had the opportunity to sit down and talk to me because she's been very busy. Both of us were aware that that was not true. We just didn't want to make time for each other because we are not close, but actually saying that would have been awkward, so I was fine with what she went with. She told me that for the first year after she moved back here she stayed with our parents, but after that she got a house in the suburbs, and since last year she's been staying there with her boyfriend. She told me that she got engaged last month. She hasn't announced it on social media yet, but she will soon. I congratulated her and I genuinely was happy for her because I knew that she really had been in love with her ex-husband, but then he ended up cheating on her, so I was glad that she was moving on. After talking about these things, she finally brought up our parents. Now this is where it got really confusing for me because I had assumed that she would speak in favor of our parents because she always got along well with them, and why wouldn't she? They always prioritized her, and even though it was not her fault, she obviously didn't mind it either. But instead she told me that she wanted me to know that she was fighting with our parents currently, and she had asked me out for lunch because she really wanted to speak to me about a couple of things and also apologize for everything that had happened in the past. I was honestly very shocked because I had no idea what she was talking about, especially since she hadn't even really done anything that she needed to apologize for. It was my parents that I had bad blood with, not her. But she explained to me that for the past couple of days after she had that fight with our parents, she had been feeling really guilty about how she herself had also treated me because it was no big secret that our parents preferred her. Even she herself was quite aware of it. She wanted to apologize to me for never doing anything about it, but I told her not to be silly because honestly, what could she even do? This was something that was a problem with my parents, not her. She said that she should have taken a stand for me, but she never did, and she let things go the way my parents wanted. But I told her that I didn't blame her for it. So there was no reason for her to feel apologetic, even though I really appreciated the fact that she was addressing this. And then she appreciated the fact that she was addressing this. And then she started telling me about the reason she and our parents were fighting right now. Apparently they were not happy about the fact that she was engaged to this guy that she was dating because it had only been a couple of months since they had met each other. My parents believed that it was too soon after the divorce to consider getting remarried again, and they were worried about what people would think about my sister. But my sister said that she didn't care about that because even before the divorce she had fallen out of love with her ex-husband, and they had just been dragging the marriage out for over a year before she found out about his affair. So it had been a long time since things had gone bad between her and her ex-husband, and now that she was finally trying to move on with her life, she thought it was really selfish of my parents to expect her not to do so just out of concern of other people gossiping about their family. To be honest, I don't even think anybody would find this interesting to gossip about because it's pretty normal to move on, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the timing of it. Anyway, as if that was not bad enough on its own, she also was fighting with them over the topic of children and whether she wanted to have them or not. I don't even understand how she is still answerable to our parents because she's an independent woman. She doesn't owe them any grandkids. But anyway, while they have been arguing about whether it's right for her to get engaged at this time or not, our mom tried to speak in her favor to convince our dad, saying that at least her decision to get married would mean that she would have kids and start a family at some point soon because she's in her early 30s, and it's about time that she starts thinking about her biological clock. So naturally my sister had to tell our parents that she was not planning on having kids at all, not just for now. She planned on leading a child-free lifestyle altogether, and that's what they had been extremely upset about because they were already pretty annoyed with her because she had decided to get married so quickly after the divorce. On top of that, she had now also told them that she did not plan on having kids. That's why they have not been on speaking terms, because the last fight was pretty intense. And while she was telling me about it, she finally broke down at the restaurant and I had to start trying to comfort her because she was obviously not taking this well. And I understand all our lives she had never done anything to disappoint our parents. In fact, she had told me that even when she had started having trouble in her previous marriage, she had spoken to our parents about it but had decided to stay in spite of the carelessness her ex-husband would treat her, just because our parents thought that it would be the right thing to do and divorce was not the solution. But that had obviously not ended well. Her ex had already been pretty toxic to her and they used to fight almost daily, and then that marriage ended with an affair. So this time she had decided she was going to do things her way, but that had come at the cost of disappointing our parents, and she told me that she really loved them. She did not want to lose them, but she also couldn't continue living her life on their terms, especially when it was about significant things like this, marriage and kids. Even in her previous marriage they had been trying to tell her that having a kid would solve all their marital problems, but she had really dodged a bullet there because her ex-husband had apparently been very toxic, so having a kid with him would have just made everything worse. She confided in me that she had never wanted kids in the first place, and a lot of decisions that she had made so far had already been on the basis of pleasing our parents. Even her decision to go to college and get a degree in business had been based on what our parents had wanted. Her entire life has been dictated by our parents, and now she just wants to do what she wants. The way she had broken down and sobbed while I tried to comfort her, I actually felt so bad for her. This was a grown woman who was finally breaking down and talking about years of trauma, and I felt terrible that I had always just assumed that her life was probably perfect, but it obviously wasn't. She was just constantly trying to survive the pressure that our parents put her under, and somewhere along the way our parents had driven a wedge between the two of us as well. I decided that I was not going to let it go on that way anymore. We had wasted enough of our lives pretending as though we had nothing to do with each other, but the truth was we were sisters and our relationship had only been ruined because of our parents. I wasn't going to let them ruin our lives anymore, and I told my sister no matter what the situation was, she could confide in me now. I was glad that she had decided to talk to me after so many years of keeping our distance from one another. I told her that she wasn't doing anything wrong and that she didn't need to let our parents make her feel guilty about it either. I gave her a bit of a pep talk, cheered her up, and told her that whatever she needed from this point onwards, She had to come to me and forget about our parents' approval because she was old enough now. She could run her life on her own, and so far obeying our parents hadn't exactly worked out well for her because her previous marriage had obviously been a disaster. And of course I couldn't tell her for a fact that this marriage would work out well, but even if it turned out to be a mistake, at least it would be her mistake and she wouldn't end up blaming somebody else for it. I also told her that our parents had tried to visit me a couple of days back trying to make things right with me so they could have a chance of being grandparents, and I finally understood why they were there. They hadn't come to apologize to me and genuinely become a part of my family again. They were just there because they had realized that they were probably not going to get any grandkids out of my sister, and now that they were sure of that, they wanted to make the most of the opportunity that they had already received but had rejected. It actually boiled my blood because my son is not some placeholder and I was not going to let them treat my son the same way that they had treated me. When I told my sister about their visit, even she seemed horrified because the timing was just too suspicious. They suddenly learned that their favorite daughter was not going to give them a grandchild anytime soon, and all of a sudden they showed up at my doorstep trying to sneak their way into my son's life. Of course something was very fishy, and she told me that I had made the right call by not letting them in and forgiving them. And after this, even if I had been considering forgiving them if they had apologized, that's not happening anymore. Anyway, I am really happy I decided to sort things out with my sister at lunch that day. In fact, I'm actually pretty glad that I decided to agree to that lunch in the first place because I had been quite skeptical about it earlier. But I got to find out a lot of things that I think I should have known, and most importantly finding out that my sister doesn't have the charm sort of lifestyle that I thought she had previously has been a real game changer. I have obviously spoken to my husband about everything, and my in-laws have also found out what I spoke to my sister about, and now they are strongly against the idea of me making comments with my parents anymore because obviously they were not here with the right intentions. They clearly had ulterior motives and it was disgusting. Anyway, it has been a couple of days since then and we have kept in touch. She has told me that she has decided to cut our parents out of her life entirely, even though earlier she had been hoping for a reconciliation. But after speaking to me, she has realized that they really don't deserve it. Not only did they treat me badly, they haven't exactly treated her well either. They have always pressured her into doing things that they wanted her to do, always burdening her with extreme expectations, and for the longest time she couldn't even figure out who she really was. I know it sounds very corny right now, but that's really how it was. Now though, she's had enough and I am glad that she's taking a stand for herself. Our parents need to stay away from both of us and let us live our lives on our own terms. They've messed up enough. Update 3. Hey, so it's been 5 weeks since I had lunch with my sister and we have been speaking every day since then. I'm really glad that we're doing this because honestly I think both of us needed this, but we hadn't even realized it until now. That conversation I had with her over lunch the other day, I think it really made us realize how badly our parents have treated us both. So now when last week our parents decided to get back in touch with us, we were the ones to shut them out this time. They had tried to reach us through email since we had blocked them everywhere else, and even then they acted as if they were doing us a huge favor by trying to talk to us. The tone of their email was pretty condescending and we did not need that, and so we ended up blocking that as well after replying that we would really appreciate it if they stayed away from us at this point onwards. Honestly, both of us had spent a really long time trying to win them over, but there was no winning with them. They hadn't been good parents to either of us, and now we were not interested in being good daughters to them either. We sent that back to them and then we blocked them, and since then they haven't tried to get back in touch with us. I am truly hoping that this time they really do leave us alone because I don't want that sort of negativity in my life. They are not only bad parents, they're just straight up bad people, and I actually thank my lucky stars that I got to cut them out of my life a really long time ago, and now I'm used to living without them. For my sister it's been a bit different because she was actually really attached to them, but honestly, I think it was more like Stockholm Syndrome or something. Anyway, she's trying to cope with that though, and I'm here for her. We have improved our relationship a lot and I'm even taking an active interest in her wedding planning, so that's saying something. I just hope that everything goes well and our parents don't get to be a part of it at all. Update 4. Hey, everyone. So I won't take up much time. I'm just here to say that my sister got married last week. I was a bridesmaid, and I honestly had so much fun. They kept it small and private, and my brother-in-law seems to be a really fun guy. I don't understand why my parents couldn't get along with him. Anyway, it's honestly their loss because my sister seems to be very happy with this relationship. At their wedding, it was very evident how overjoyed both of them were, and the fact that my parents couldn't approve of something like this out of concern of what random and irrelevant people would say about them. That's just pathetic. Anyway, I guess it's pretty obvious that my sister and I are getting along pretty well now, and I would say that we are friends, pretty good friends actually. We haven't heard from our parents in a really long time. It's been almost 7 months since my last update here. About 5 months ago they sent us both an email saying that they were leaving everything to charity and that neither of us should expect to inherit anything after they pass away because clearly both of us are ungrateful brats. I don't know why they found it necessary to send that to us in the first place or what they thought was going to happen after that. We didn't go begging for forgiveness from them, so I'm guessing that they are disappointed about that, but nobody really cares. I'm happy with my life with my husband and my son and my in-laws who are far better than my parents could have ever been. My sister is also really happy with her husband, so my parents can stay by themselves and marinate in their bitterness and hate for everyone else for all I care. It's honestly their loss.